So I guess we could start. Yeah, hi, my name is Gong. So I was thinking that we could talk a bit about rapid prototyping. So the idea of rapid prototyping is that we could produce and construct a product that the customer or users really want. So it's like boosts the communication between the developers and the user or the client to fully understand what we really want to produce, and we don't produce anything that isn't valid and isn't what the customer really wants. So that's the basic idea of rapid prototyping. Something about me. So I work in a company called Sealy Solutions, and we are an IT consulting company. And I'm a junior Drupal developer, but I'm mostly a designer, so I do coding, but I'm a designer. So I'm not really doing at all model development at all. So I'm only doing stemming in Drupal. So we are going to mostly be talking about the front-end development. So what I'm interested in are user experience design. I think it's very interesting because it's like you can do very fancy things, and you need to understand what users really want and what makes the user's experience like satisfied. Then of course prototyping, I like to do it because I think it's a very good way how to communicate with the end user. Actually, something about Sealy. So we do coding and information management with, for example, big data and analytics. And of course, what I mean by coding, we are in the technology independent. So we do Java coding with Microsoft technologies, and of course Drupal and many other technologies. For example, we don't care what databases our customers want to use. We can do Oracle, we can do Microsoft, and even SQLite if the customer really wants. So what's rapid prototype? So it's based on functional components. So every component what we do are really like working. So the user can test them, he can push the buttons and see what's happening. And it's a running website. So the idea is that a prototype is not a Photoshop picture. So it really works, and you can deploy it, and it's really a working website. In Drupal's case, it's a website, but it could be something, a desktop application as well, or a mobile native application. And of course, it's designed, so it's made to look nice and fancy, so the user really sees what's the end result. And of course, it's rapid, so it's fast to develop, and we can see fast results. We see results, and we see what kind of the user can see, like what kind of thing he's going to get, and he can try it. And mostly, you don't have to think about the overall architecture at all. So it's only the client. We're going to use some tools to abstract the server side, the backend, away. So this is important because the user won't anyway see the server. The users are going to only see the client, and they can test the client. So let's talk about what is the typical process. So we can use this to understand why rapid prototyping is very important. And we for example, in Sealy, we do it mostly with our customers. So in the first stage, you're in a discovery stage. You start interviewing stakeholders, try to understand what's the project about and what are we going to do. And then, of course, we're going to make the specifications of the functionalities. We have to know what kind of functionalities our software is going to have, and make some risk analysis and make other analysis about like what kind of products are already in the market and and what are we going to do at the end. So this actually means that we're going to make plenty much of documents. And after that, when we have a basic idea of what we are doing, we go to the design stage, where we start to produce those kind of wireframes, for example, and Photoshop mockups. We're going to talk about them a bit later. This is a very important stage because this is the stage where we start really thinking about what are we going to do in this typical process. So this is not the rapid prototype way of working. So in this stage, we're going to make more documents because there are wireframes, Photoshop mockups. These are all going to produce very much documents for the users to read, to understand what we're going to do. And after that, we're going to develop it. It's going to take, let's say, half a year, and all the developers are going to work hard for in that stage. And at the end, we can have some problems because we don't understand, after all, what are we doing, because the user is not getting the real application to see before it's too late. The only thing what the users and the client sees are the Photoshop mockups and wireframes and a hell lot of documents. So that's the problem here. So we make wireframes for structure and mockups for artistic design. So they together are the way to show the user what are we going to do in this typical process. So these are what we call wireframes. So something about wireframes. There may be a lot of numbers in wireframes because it makes it usually a bit messy. And of course, they are static. And too much too early. That's a very common problem with wireframes because we start to think about the overall picture from the very start, and we draw a lot of wireframes and try to handle the whole software with wireframes. And this produces a heavy documentation model. And the final problem is that when you have the documents, do people really read them, and how much do they understand about these wireframes? It's a very important problem, which at the end causes the problem that the developers don't produce such an application that client really wants. And something about the mockups. Mostly it has the same problems as wireframes. So they're static and so on. And they are mostly very time consuming. With mockups, I mean Photoshop mockups. And for the users and your clients, it sometimes causes a very unrealistic expectations of what kind of program are we starting to do. And they are also very hard to adapt to changes. For example, if the customer wants some component to be removed and be changed to some other, it's very hard to start changing them and showing the customer that showing the change, how much they change, and so it's just too slow to do the process. And it's also, of course, it's not responsive. It's very hard to show with Photoshop mockups that how the application reacts to screen size changing. So that's why we try to do rapid prototyping. And the idea is that we do a very light defining process where we get a view about what are we trying to do. And then we go to the stage where we start the rapid prototyping. And during that stage, it's a concurrent process where we do sketching, communication, and development at the same time. And we are very close to the customer, and we do, for example, in Siili, we're mostly, our consultants are all working in our clients' places, and at their sitting next to their developers and doing work with them together in the same room to communicate all the time, telling the customer that what are we doing now, what are we going to do tomorrow, and how the product is looking at the moment. So, and at the end we can deploy a product that the customer has already seen, seen before. So the advantages of rapid prototyping: we can focus on the content and the functionalities because we have a website that is already running and the functionalities are already implemented. And we have a very strong stakeholder cooperation. We're always communicating with the stakeholder and telling them that what are we doing and what. And of course, the communication focus and less documents, because we don't do wireframes and Photoshop mockups. We really do the actual product and show the customer the actual product. So at the end, the customer is really going to get the product what we are doing, what we were doing at the whole process. Yeah, here are some tools and technologies what I and in Siili we prefer when we do rapid prototyping. Middleman is, we're going to talk about this a bit more later, but middleman is the whole thing that wraps these technologies together and launches them. SAS, HAML, these are all, and Angular ES, and these are all front-side technologies. We're going to talk about them now, actually. Yeah. So HAML. HAML is a templating language. It's going to be compiled to HTML, but you write it with intents. How do you say it in English? Yeah, intents. So it's very clear, and you can use the template language. Gives you the possibility to make components more reusable. So it's for lazy people, but laziness is good for us in this case, to make very clear and reusable components and no useless code. SAS is also a pre-processable CSS language, and it actually compiles to CSS, just like HAML compiles to HTML. And SAS is also for lazy people, and which is good for us, because we can now use mixings and variables and this kind of stuff to minimize the code and reuse code. But this is on the CSS side to make style sheets. And then Bourbon. Bourbon, if they who knows Compass, it's very like Compass, but Bourbon is much more lighter than Compass. So what these actually are, they are libraries for the SAS. So we get ready-made functions when we write SAS code. Yeah.
What do you mean by lightweight? More lightweight than
it means that you can modify. You have a more higher level of freedom to modify them, because Compass has very much ready-made code for you that actually forces you to do some kind a specific kind of design, and Bourbon gives you a much more higher level of freedom to add your. Bourbon has only the mandatory code ready implemented for you in the mixins.
So it means that there's not so much built in.
Yeah.
It just gives you the framework to do all the necessary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has only the mandatory and the important ones. And you can do your own design. Actually, it means you can do your own design much more easier than with Compass. And then at the end, Middleman, which wraps all of them together. So middleman is a static site generator, we call it. But actually what it does is it launches a server for you. It has SAS, HAML, these kind of preprocessable languages built in. You can use them. And it also has the live reload. So every time when you write code and you press save, it will automatically reload the page. So you don't need to press the refresh button all the time. So some reasons why we should use middleman when we do rapid prototyping. It helps us use reusable components to produce them. It offers you it has a feature called partials. You use partials to make these kind of reusable components, and you can put them around the pages. You can, for example, put the footer and the navigation bar. These are all able to be built as partials and be set around the page. A very good example is that if you have a navigation bar when you have 15 different pages, and you have to do a change on every page, then it's very hard if you don't have this kind of reusable components. Yep. So it gives you the possibility to use preprocessor languages, SAS, HAML, these kind of things. And you don't have to worry about the server side, because the main idea is we produce the client to our users so they can test that, and not the server side. We don't need to worry about that at all. And that's what designers really much want to see, because they don't want to mess with the server side. And then we can use references to YAML and JSON data. So what that means, we have an example later, but we can gather information in a JSON or a YAML file and call them in these partials, for example, or other components. And it's very simple to deploy. It's like a few rows of boilerplate code, and after that, it's 2 commands, and you have the program running Heroku, for example. So it's very easy to share it. Yeah.
Do you mean by the referencing the data that it's replacing the database for?
Yeah, it's actually abstracting the database layer. So because the designer don't want to touch that. For example, you do Firebase, these kind of programs, they try to simulate the database. But in our case, we can do it even lighter. We can just use a YAML file and store that data there and call it into the front side. Yeah, so I'm going to show an example how middleman works. So this is in some place of your site, you can call a partial, and in this case, it's a reusable component, for example, called profile cards. And this locals means that we're going to pass some data into it. The next one is profiles. It's a variable name, and we're going to pass in a data set named group in the file called investors, and there is a variable called group1. So actually, this profiles part, it means that we import a YAML file set in. And this is a normal variable, the variation. We're just going to pass a string nifty inside the partial. So this is very simple. We are going to make a very easy component. Here we see the YAML file. So this is what we previously seen partial. This is what it imports into the partial. You see that here there is 2 objects, 2 persons. They have an image, they have name, a title, and some primary information. And these 2 objects are put into a list of investors. As you see previously, we put the investors group 1 in the profiles variable, and we pass it to the partial. And here it is, investors group 1. We put this inside the partial, all this data. And let's see the partial code. So in this partial code, that do is a Ruby function, and where we loop through the list. As we previously mentioned, it was a list what we put it in. This group 1 is a list. And we put it in, and we loop through it, and we create li markup that has a class name profile card. I'm going to loop through the data and produce a markup for the profile cards. So this is actually pretty simple. If you check some basic syntax for HAM, you can recognize how this is working.
Was it the comment you saw before? The comment you saw before the one line?
Yeah.
No, I mean, oh,
this one?
There. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's also a list. So actually, we have two lists, two loops. First, we loop through these investors. We're going to get the two objects, these objects, and then we loop again and get the prime information from them, and we just produce some markup that we can style later. So as you see, middleman is like very easy to do. We have you just need to know very basic syntax, and you can produce very complicated components. Yeah, so this is the result. Of course, we added some style sheet for this. But you see, there's the two components here. And the image is just from somewhere from the internet, in this case. But yeah, this is a very fast and reusable components. And you can show the customer that what are we really now producing. This is much more than, for example, a Photoshop layout, because with a Photoshop layout, the user can't really test it. He can't scroll it around, and for example, when we implement it, we have to figure out like how to do it actually, because the Photoshop layout doesn't really tell you how we could do it. But in our case, we have the code ready, and another very good point is that we actually see here that we have the idea already how we could implement this into Drupal. For example, here we see that we loop through two YAML files. This is very basically, it's a view. So in Drupal, you just actually, you can figure it out, like I should maybe make a view that just produces that sort of markup what it wants. And then we just put the style sheet in, and then it becomes the one we really want it to be. So let's put this together. So the main idea is that the designer can start doing the rapid prototype with the customer and show the customer that what we are doing and what this end product is going to be look like and how it feels. And for example, Drupal model developers can separately start doing the backend already. And in this case, in Drupal's case, they can develop the Drupal models. And the advantages here in rapid prototyping and the very strong cooperation with the customer is that we don't have documents. We don't have so much documents, but the product. The product, in my opinion, is way more and way much better for the customer to see than a Photoshop layout. And we're going to get a lot of feedback from the customer and continuously. So we always know what we are doing and are we doing the right things, because the customer is telling you that is it right or not. And of course, we can start doing A/B tests, for example, with the customers already. And of course, we can test the functionalities. And at the end, it's very easy to use Puma, it's a HDCP server and Heroku and this kind of stuff, and deploy it to the internet and share it with everyone in the stakeholder. And they can see that what we're doing. Yeah. So that's all. If anyone has any questions.
How do you do an A/B test?
A/B tests.
Yes.
Well, there are many ways to do that, of course. But because we have the reusable components, we can, for example, just deploy 2 versions that use 2 different components, for example.
So it's the same content, but with the different styles?
Actually, when you do the style sheet right, you can style components like separately from each other, so they won't like destroy each other's styles. If you mean that.
Yes, and after it, you just get the feedback from the customer, or you have some group of people who just do this A/B test?
I don't know, do I understand right, but...
do you have a special group of people who test your A prototype and B prototype, and after they get your feedback, or you just work with customer?
Well, you can... well, there's many ways you can do that, of course. But the simplest way, actually, for example, is that you have a customer that, well, for example, they have 4 users that will use in the future. So you could show 2 of them the one version of the product, and the others 2 the another version of the product, and just gather the information from them, and then switch sides and gather information, and try to analyze which one would be better. In the if we simplify it. Yeah, thanks.
So how do you implement it on Drupal? So you just take the generated HTML file and put in the template and put the variables in there?
For example, in Drupal, you have the SAS model. You can use the SAS model like so that you just import all the data, all the SAS files from it. Just take all the SAS files and put it into the directory where Drupal. The HTML you have to like figure out yourself, because in middleman you can like build the HTML, but after that you have to like just look at try to like see the components and implement them.
Or do you just take like you make your own team based on the generate generate markup? You take that and
yeah, you use the ham generator, because in Drupal at the moment I think that you don't really have ham tools. So you just have to look at the site and copy the markup and use the markup. But mainly it helps already a lot that you see the markup, because from the markup you can decide what kind of view and what kind of components I should make in Drupal. So Survivor Prototype is just another version actually of the Photoshop mockup with the functionalities and all the styles ready made. Yeah.
Can you do it like that? You have this kind of ready-made product. Can you integrate it with Drupal so that it's like study site,
yeah.
Study site, right?
Yeah.
So you just put it in to the internet and people start to use it.
Yeah.
Of course, you cannot edit it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you do it like put that to production that is displayed to the internet, and then just put the Drupal in like one part at a time. So you could like make the static side, the Drupal side one part at a time. So you could make the product deploy it more early.
Or you mean like if you have a component, you can like export it as a component to Drupal?
Yeah, I mean that you could like take the static side that it would be already on the internet, and then just take one part of it that is integrated to Drupal. So
yeah, of course.
So it would be like earlier in the internet for the audience. Have you thought about that?
So you're going for having part of the URLs route to Drupal, part of them route to static.
Yeah. Would that be possible, or Have you thought about that?
Actually, I don't really get the.
Do you get the idea?
I don't get the idea actually.
So if you want to deploy the site more fast,
Yeah.
you have the static site.
Yeah.
It could be used. So
Yeah.
you just deploy the static site.
Yeah.
And then you on your development machine take one part of that and integrate that into Drupal. So
Oh,
it could be
okay.
edited,
Yeah.
and then just deploy that, and then
And the other part will stay
yeah,
stay
and
as
then
the
when
static
you have
site.
time, and then take out
Okay.
the
Well, I don't know any ways to do that at the moment, but it could be actually very cool.
You can just route it with the server software that pass your internet and make it route part of the URLs to Drupal and part of them to static file.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
you could create a Drupal site where you basically just manually load things with
Yeah.
Twig or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, you just make static templates to
You just make blocks or whatever.
Well, yeah, yeah. Then you put the URL to the static site. Well, yeah, yeah. Why not? Yeah, well, very good point.
On the overhead.
Gotta try it.
We'll try.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, see your designers do all the prototypes or all the forwards, and then you have Drupal guys making them into Drupal.
There are actually very many models how we do this, but this is one kind of style how we do it. For example, our homepage is done with this kind of method. But of course, some people like to do the prototype straight into the Drupal, and it's not wrong, and things get done anyway.
It's done and then redone.
Yeah.
Have you tried the Photoshop asset generator functionality in this workflow of live reloading? So I just recently I was using the same workflow.
Yeah.
I discovered that you can, if you have the Photoshop generating assets automatically all the time, you can basically move things around in Photoshop and they move in live.
In Drupal?
It keeps updating the middleman.
In the middleman?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it keeps the live reload keeps updating also the assets, not only the SAS or HTML handle.
So it's some sort of
you can change
plugin?
file things in Photoshop and like graphic assets moving the change on the live preview.
Okay.
That was really mind-blowing.
Okay. So it's some sort of plugin for the
It's
Photoshop.
Photoshop CC functionality.
Okay. Have to check that out.
It generates, you have a Photoshop file with the PNG assets, and you just change something and saves PNG automatically.
Okay.
On the folder.
Okay, that's very cool. Have you tried? Nice.
Do you have a tip on how to avoid rewriting the SAS files when you actually start making the Drupal site, because the HTML structure is way more complex than in any prototype files. I mean that it has more like nested ifs and class names changed.
Yeah, you mean that?
I mean that how can you take most advantage of the already created SAS files in the prototype phase?
For example, we have used it so that we just override all the templates. For example, when you make a view, we override the view template so that it produces a markup that we used in the prototype. So we don't need to write the SAS again. So it's actually pretty easy to export the prototype to the Drupal. You just have to analyze the markup a bit, that how do we separate them to Drupal components, for example, views. And then we go override the views. And well, that's very good because in Drupal we can override everything, so we can change the markup to the markup we want and what's in the prototype. So it's very easy to combine them. Any other questions? Ideas?
You guys cover middleman versus Jekyll or Jekyll, like middleman, I understood is more like a not blog-centric version of Jekyll.
Actually, I haven't used Jekyll at all. I don't know what kind of.
What about the fashion labs?
Nope.
It's like this kind of atomic design idea.
Okay.
Yeah, this kind of, but it's PHP, so I'm not. It's not so
Okay.
likely that when they make this kind of atomic design parts, like parcels, and it also generates style guides and
okay.
like that. And it's closed on the responsive.
Okay.
You haven't heard?
I haven't tried, but I guess I've heard it, but I haven't tried what kind of features it has.
Basic idea is using design components with the design layout.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you finalize the layout in the prototype or at the actual end product of the Drupal?
What do you mean finalize?
For example, that you fine-tune the spacing, paddings, and stuff like that, colors, backgrounds.
Well, you don't really need it. The prototype is like, okay, if the colors and layout works in the prototype, then they actually work in the Drupal as well.
So you basically make the prototype as good as it needs to be in the production phase.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, mostly we do it so that markup won't change so much, at least, at all, when we try to implement it to the Drupal. I can actually show you that. For example, this is built on middleman. So in middleman, it's very fast, like to launch the server. You just like put middleman server, and it goes on. So you can see that this is how it looks in middleman. There's some mock-up pictures and content, and in our site, it looks actually the same. This is the site in production. So it doesn't really need to be changed at all.
Your site is on Drupal, right?
Yeah, our site is on Drupal. So you don't really need to change the markup and styles or colors actually at all.
Whenever you make any changes, you have that template from the middleman, and then you make whatever you make, and then when you're ready, you just export the SAS.
Yeah. And of course, you can make the changes straight to the Drupal as well if you just don't want to use the middleman. But it's easy like to test it on middleman and then just export it to Drupal. Yeah. Yeah, well, thanks to everyone. Have to try that Photoshop thing at least.